All right, we are live. How you guys doing? This is Neil D'Souza, host of Magic Mondays, Leadership to Wealth. Love to have you guys here again with us. We're ready to rock and roll, but I got to introduce again my co-hosts. First of all, the man, the myth, the legend, Jason Vaz.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Magic Mondays. Make sure your coffee is black.
Nice.
The only way to drink it.
Is your coffee black? Or do you like a little bit of cream in it? I don't want to know. Let's and of course, the man that's always going to give us the mortgage minutes, Marlon Yee, man.
What's up? What's up? Nice to see everyone again this week.
Good to have you with us again, Marlon. Boys, you guys have a good weekend?
Fantastic weekend. They were calling for rain, but it never came.
Yeah, fabulous.
Great. Well, listen, I want to start us off a little bit differently this week. I got one of my adoring fans wrote in this morning, and we'll call her Mama Mia. Mama Mia wrote in today, and she had a question that I want us to start off with. And what she said was, "You guys good for this? I'm going to throw this at you. You ready?
Go for it.
All right.
Let's hear you, Mama Mia."
Lots of people will be looking at pulling out money and purchasing out of the city as things have become too expensive given the stress test requirements. I'm really interested in how the need for housing will be fulfilled for those needing to buy homes to live in rather than buying more properties or rent out. And then there's the second part, which I'll come back after that. But what do you guys think about that? Lots of people will be looking to pull money out and purchasing out of the city because of stress test. I guess, first of all, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a growing sentiment of people that want to pull out money and they want to start investing in real estate, especially when you look at the news and you live in a suburb, all you see is signs for sale, sold over asking, for sale, sold over asking, for sale, sold over asking. So it's clear that homes are growing in value. And that's where people like to go to, you know. Nobody jumps into the stock market when it's down, but when it's going up, they're throwing all their money into it. And real estate is no different.
Yeah.
So I do see a lot of people doing that. Now, the entry level is a little different.
Yeah.
Stress test has made things a little bit harder. I agree.
Well, let me ask Marlon that question. Marlon, do you think that the stress test is driving people to?
So, I mean, you have to take it one step behind, right? I mean, she's talking about people who are refinancing and buying rental properties, right? So before the stress test recently got increased, the original plan was to only go after uninsurable mortgages, which are refinances and rentals, because that's where the hot spot in the market was. People were taking out money. Rates were significantly cheaper 3 months ago. They were buying, rentals. So, but the stresses came and they applied it across the board, regardless if it was a rental, owner occupied, whatever it was. So to answer your question, yeah, there's been lots of people that have been doing that. 80% of my business since January has been calling old clients saying, "Hey, your house is up, 40%. Rates are down 1%. Why don't you take some money out and buy something?" Yeah. Keep in mind, though, the stress test is where it was just before pre-COVID. So these are not unseen stress test levels by any means. Yeah, it's definitely had a minimal effect on the market as predicted. It's only really affected what we call fringe buyers, people who are in the cusp of getting approved. To answer a question, where is everyone going to be living? Where is all this demand going to be met? Condo starts are at one of the highest levels recently. A report came out for a brand new condo pre-construction. I think last week we were talking about Mattamy Homes and a bunch of other people coming out looking at rental style projects. So the topic is there. It's a good question. We definitely have a supply issue. So
yeah. Okay.
I want to just quickly touch on something.
Oh,
if you don't mind. Yeah. Just to kind of build on what Marlon has said about condos. We were preaching this as realtors in January. I gave a call to every one of my clients that was looking to buy a condo in Toronto. A lot of them were pulling back because I said, "Hey, we're all work from home. Should I be living in Toronto?" And I said, "Listen, this is the time to buy. There's blood in the water. All right, go grab it." At the time, nobody wanted to live in Toronto. There there was a surplus of inventory. So you were able to negotiate, you were able to get an offering with conditions. And we all said, once this pandemic clears up, things are going to come back, especially with the way the condo market works. And what people don't realize is when the freehold market hits a critical point, that's when the condo market grows. It is an entry level type of property. That's the product it is. For people to think, when it's down, I don't want to buy now. No, that's the perfect time to buy. People were getting condos for $50,000 under market value. Where are they now? They have an extra $50,000 of equity. So it's a little too late right now, but the reality is it's about looking for those opportunities and knowing how to identify them. So yeah, definitely. Condo starts are big now, but they weren't, not through all of 2021. There was an opportunity.
Well, here's the second part of the question is, let me ask, I have a property valued at about $450,000 purchased a year ago. When can I take out equity to purchase another property? And which of course, the question will really go around, what kind of mortgage did you get? Is it a closed mortgage? How long? And then of course there will be certain penalties. Do you want to address that part, Marlon?
Yeah, that's a question for Marlon.
Yeah, so it's really going to come down to how much she put down originally. You can refinance
5-year
property.
fixed.
5-year fixed, that's fine. But I mean, you can refinance a property up to 80% of the market value. So I mean, if she had put down 20% to start with, we can only assume maybe the property grew in the last year by 5 to 10%. So not much there to refinance, so to speak. But as the equity grows, she can definitely consider refinancing it. If it's a 5-year fix, the penalty might be very high or very low because it's just very close to the term where she started her mortgage. If it's a 5-year variable, it's just simply 3 months interest to break that, right? So she can definitely look into refining. I just don't know if it'll be worth it for her unless her property has gone up significantly, or unless maybe it was a pre-construction that closed at 450 that she bought 5 years ago. That's probably worth maybe 800 now. Then that's a different story, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, Mama Mia, I hope you got that. And the final part of her question was, is there a grid of how far out geographically I can buy? I'm going to pull equity and add to savings. What's it going to look like in 3.5 more years when I'm ready?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Great idea. And you'll be in a great position. And Mama Mia, I know your trajectory. I know you've been hot on the trail, making things happen. And even as a single mom, I know you've been killing it out there. And so keep it up. And thank you so much for watching us and sending in your questions. And guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in, type them in the chat. And we're happy if we can address it on the show right now today. We'll absolutely do that. If we can't, we'll address it on our next week's show. So please make sure you put in anything that you're wondering about. And if you're interested in finding out more about some of the things that Jason says or that Marlon says, absolutely feel free. And of course, you guys know I'm always available for any of your questions. And so love it. Okay, great. Now let's move on to what we are going to talk about today. Before we do that, I just wanted I had one other question about last week. I talked about the cash flow quadrant in investment clues. And so the one quick thing I wanted to mention was the question was, what's the difference and in the different sides? We talked about what each one is. The way to look at it is that on this side of the quadrants you basically have a job. Even if you're self-employed, if you're a doctor, the moment that you stop working, a lawyer, you stop working, you stop making income. So this side, the moment you stop working, you stop getting paid. And on this side, if you have a big business or you have investments, they're working for you, whether you are eating, sleeping, doing whatever you want to be doing, you're still making money. And so ideally, you want to, if you're an employee right now, you want to move around in a counterclockwise fashion. You want to get getting some self-employed income, get to business income, you could get to the other side and have money working for you. So if you're on this side, you want to get to this side. Anyways, that's the last of investment clues. All right, here we go. When things go wrong. When things go wrong. And we all know that there's a massive amount of stories out there of things going wrong, but let's break it down in a different way. Let's instead do some top five things that kind of go wrong in different areas. And who wants to go first? Do we start with the realtor? Let's start with the mortgage man, because Jason, so why don't we start with Marlon? Marlon, why don't you give us the top 5 things that go wrong when buying?
Right. So I'm basically going to give some
finance.
Yeah, on the finance side, I'm going to give you some finance tips of what not to do once you've got your mortgage approved, or even during the process. So, as any good mortgage professional, you really need to take the time to understand your client, interview your client. All mortgages are not cut the same. All rates are not the same. All products are not the same. And all products are not meant for certain people. So you really need to understand what's going on. So I'll talk about a couple things.
Did you just say for people to interview their mortgage professional?
More so for us to interview the clients, but yeah, they should definitely interview us too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got to take some time to know the client. Not last like, what's your purchase price? What rate are you looking for? That's like the very tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, you really need to understand what's going on in the person's life, and I think some of these top five tips here will kind of key in on that. So, the first one I'll start with is, once you've been approved. Keep in mind you're approved subject to everything that's on your application, even the amount of debt you have. One thing that's very common, and you may not believe it, is that, once people hear that they're approved, maybe 3 weeks before they close their home, they go out and buy a brand new truck or a brand new car, a brand new lease. All this will have a negative effect on your approval, especially if the payment's higher. And all of a sudden, you don't tell your mortgage broker about this, and it comes time to sign papers. The bank pulls your credit again and says, hey, you know what? You're over your ratios. We cannot lend to you. So, have an open conversation with your mortgage professional. If you're planning on buying anything, make sure you speak to them first. Typically, we don't recommend any changes in purchases or anything prior to closing. So don't buy anything brand new. Don't accept any new credit cards. Don't spend any more money. Leave everything as is. You're in zombie mode until you close, okay?
Okay. Okay, guys, I just need to jump in here. Folks, please listen to Marlon on this one. Do be in zombie mode and do not buy a truck. We have called every single real estate professional on the planet has dealt with somebody who has gone out and bought a truck, bought a vehicle in the middle of the process, and then it has thrown their ratios off, and then they don't qualify for the loan. Now, I shouldn't be saying that being in alternate financing, but I just have to say it. Thank you. Thanks, Marlon.
No problem.
Number
two, relationship status. If you are going through a separation or divorce, this is key information to share with your mortgage professional, especially if you don't have your final divorce papers yet or separation papers. Many lenders will find out if you're in a separation, and obviously they'll want to see a final separation agreement to find out how much money you're being paid or how much money you're paying out. And unfortunately, most of them will not lend to you until you have that final separation agreement. And you most likely will have to close with a private lender, which is what Neil specializes in. But if you identify this up front, we can come up with a strategy to move you from private to a B lender or an A lender. But definitely be very open and upfront about what's going on in your situation. The last thing you want is a surprise at the last minute and not being approved and scrambling to get alternative lending. And alternative lending has standard pricing, but if it's in a rush situation, the pricing goes up, and it's already pricey enough. So you're going to pay to play. So just make sure you're very upfront of what's going on. The third thing is down payment. So down payment, as we all know, has to meet what we call anti-money laundering standards, meaning the bank wants to see the money in your account for at least 90 days. And anything over $10,000 will have to be explained, or you have to show where the source of the money is coming from. So large cash deposits will not be accepted. Any large movements of money, you'll have to share those other accounts. So be very clear about where the down payment's coming from. Be very upfront. Make sure your mortgage professional reviews these down payment documents, because I've seen down payment kill many, many files when we cannot explain where funds are coming from, or funds are coming from unacceptable sources. And that's something that can be easily addressed up front just by looking at the docs. So be open to sharing your down payment docs with your professional, okay?
Right. So what you're saying, Marlon, is, well, number one, you mentioned about approvals are actually conditional, and don't run outside of that. Number two, if you're getting divorced, let us know. And then thirdly, you said about down payments, make sure that it's clear and that your financing professional has all the details around that.
Correct.
Where it is, where it's being held. Don't pull any surprises at the last minute, hoping that he can get it through for you.
Exactly, right? I mean, we want to see it up front. Don't move any money until the professional tells you to move it. There's a specific order you have to move the money, just to make it easy for the lender to understand the flow of money, right?
Yeah.
When you move money too much around in accounts, it gets very confusing, and lenders start to ask a lot of questions, and it's just a very troublesome process.
You look risky. You look like
you look risky. Yes, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Number 4.
Okay. Number 4, appraisals. So obviously this is a hot one in the market now.
Hang on one second there, Marlon. We got a live one. Ria Ramkasoon says, my car was part of an estate. Documents were needed. What? Do we need any clarification on that, Marlon, to answer that?
No, I mean, if it's part of an estate, I mean, yeah, you would have to provide documents about the vehicle. Yes. I'm not sure if they're asking something more specific than that.
Sometimes, I'll just interject there. I know that sometimes it can help with an application if they list a car as an asset, if it's like a luxury vehicle, if it's an antique vehicle, something like that, when you need to kind of, and I've seen buyers that do that. She's wanting to know if a letter would be okay. I think to answer that question, it comes down to the type of vehicle. If you've got like a 64 Mustang, that's a classic that goes up in value. You'd probably need a letter from an appraiser that says that, hey, this is actually an asset. Most cars are viewed as liabilities, not as assets, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. And then it'll also be, as a liability, it'll also be listed there in your expenses, whatever your payment is and the like. So make sure that you list that information on there. All right.
Hey,
thank you for that question, Ria. And Marlon, number 4.
Number 4, appraisals. So the lender will only lend up to 80% of the appraised value, right? So I actually have a live case right now. This client actually purchased a property for $1,010,000. The appraisal just came back at $990,000. So we're short $20,000. What this means for the client is that they have to come up with 80% of the shortfall. So 80% of 20,000 is 16 grand. So unfortunately, in this case, the client will have to come up with 16 grand because the value of the home did not come in appraised as the purchase price. This may or may not happen to you. Depends if you're in a bidding war, depends how much you paid, depends on the type of properties that closed within the last 30 days. But it is something that you have to be aware of in a hot market. Sometimes appraisals don't always come in, and you will have to cover 80% of the differential in order to cover the shortfall.
Yeah. Okay. And if you've waived your conditions,
if
you've not put it subject to financing, then you've got to find 16 grand.
Yep, and that's exactly the situation we're in, and we're closing June 30th. So
nice.
We're figuring something out, but I mean, unfortunately, this is what it's come down to. Last but not least, I just want to talk about employment. Make sure you're very clear about your employment with your mortgage professional. Whether you're hourly, part-time, self-employed, there are many different rules, whether you're on maternity leave. I think the biggest one for many people is that when we ask them how much they make, they tend to throw in overtime and bonuses. So I always like to ask for documents up front so I can see what your base salary is, what your overtime is, and what's your bonus. And the reason for this is lenders will only accept overtime and bonus if you have a 2-year average and your most recent year has to be higher than your previous year. If not, we have to use the lower number. So quoting a number over the phone is great, but always offer to show your professional the documents to say, can you just verify that we can use this amount of income? Because that's also a deal killer if we give income in one way and we show it another way. it won't cover what you're looking for, and you'll be declined. So, the whole thing here is have a conversation, have a relationship, be open with your professional, make sure you show the docs up front, and you'll have a very, very smooth process and avoid things that go wrong. So,
woo, look at that. Just bang them out, lined it up. That's how
line them up and bang them out. Yeah, that's how we do
it. So that's awesome. All right. Top 5 things, Jason, when it comes to buying.
Okay, we're going to breeze through these. So there are plenty of things that can go wrong when buying and selling real estate. Trying to confine them into 5 things. Number 1, now this is in no particular order. These are just randomly thrown out there. But number 1 is missing fixtures. All right. As when you buy a house, you're not just buying the house. You're getting appliances. You're getting fridges, stoves, microwaves, dishwashers. It is not uncommon for an agent when they're putting an offer to just say, hey, the fridge, the stove, the dishwasher, the microwave are included. And that's how they write it. Now, if you have stainless steel appliances high end, we've seen where right before closing, the seller goes and gets a bargain brand, throws it in there. And unfortunately, if your agreement only states a fridge, a stove, and just kind of gives the basic names of things, or even worse, just as appliances included, and upon closing, you realize that, hey, these aren't what we agreed upon, you're simply out of luck. There is no recourse. Sure, you can sue anyone for anything. The reality is the cost of just retaining a lawyer and going through the process, you're going to be looking at 2 years before you get any reparations for it. So again, you're SOL in those situations. So missing fixtures doesn't happen as often now. It used to be a big issue before. Easy way for you guys to avoid this is just make sure details. If it's a stainless steel fridge, write down stainless steel fridge. If it's a gas stove, write down gas stove. Again, your agent should be walking you through this stuff, but that's something that we see pops up every now and then. Interesting story. I dealt with a deal about 4 years ago where an agent actually was representing themselves, and they listed all of what we call chattels and fixtures. So your appliances and such, they put them in the exclusion pile. Well, what happened is my seller put everything on Kijiji and sold it, and legally we were allowed to. So that guy moved in with his family. He was representing himself. And there was no appliances in that house. So guys, attention to detail. So that's the one thing. So something that can go wrong, doesn't always go wrong, but sometimes. Number 2, all right, when you have an unattentive buyer, all right, I can't tell you guys, this usually happens with first-time home buyers that they don't have a full grasp on how the market's working, okay? So these are people that say they're in a multiple offer situation. It's a Wednesday evening, and say they put in an offer for $800,000. Selling agent comes back saying, hey, that doesn't quite cut it. See how much more your clients can come up by. Me as the agent calls my client, says, hey guys, if we put an extra $5,000, I think we can get this. This is where the buyer says, let me talk to my wife. And then they go MIA for an hour and a half.
It is like gone.
What they don't realize is, in that hour and a half that it took you to decide to come up $5,000, you have the selling agent, the listing agent, negotiating with another buyer. Mm. And they went and sold it to them for $3,500 over their price. So it didn't come down to who was willing to pay more. It came down to who can make a decision faster. And in markets like this where they're red hot, it's all about moving. It's all about being able to make a decision quick, easy, and move forward. The advice I have for buyers is aggregate your offers. Say, okay, this is how we want to start at. This is where we want to end up at. We don't even want to go a dime over this price. If you're at this price, hold your ground. There's nothing wrong with losing a multiple offer if you don't feel that's the right price. But if you're willing to come up, just say yes. You already made this decision. So again, unattentive buyers, that's where that can be a problem. That's where things kind of go wrong. Number 3, this is for after you've purchased the home and you move in and the place is a mess. I cannot tell you how many stories we have where there is black garbage bags in the kitchen. The garage is filled with debris. I myself, my own house that I'm sitting in right now, they left their couch here with like scratched up, filled with cat hair. Now, luckily I was doing massive renovation, so I just threw it in the bin, but this happens. And if you show up with a U-Haul truck ready to move your stuff in, and you have to clear this out, that could be problematic. There is a very easy way to kind of work around this. Usually, agents will put in the clauses in the Schedule B of a Schedule A of a agreement. They'll put down that the house has to be free of debris and broom swept condition. Now, if you're only seeing the house on closing day, it's very hard to kind of come back when you've just gotten the keys. So I would suggest make one of your revisits very close to closing. That'll give you an idea. If 95% of their stuff is moved out by that day, or it's in boxes, it's probably going to be in good condition. If 2 days before closing, it doesn't look like they've started their move yet, chances are things are not going to be good. So you may want to get on the phone with your lawyer and remind the seller's lawyer that, hey, this has to be in broom swept condition. Alrighty. Now, talking about clauses, number 4, this is poorly written clauses. All right. In many cases, say you get an inspection on a property, but you still want it, and there's something that comes up. So say you're buying your first house and you find out you're buying it in the winter and you find out the AC is not working too well. Well, you're moving in the winter. It shouldn't really bother you. So you put a clause in there saying that the AC will be repaired by the seller on the seller's dime. Seller agrees. Come closing, they didn't repair it. The way you write that clause is you have to put an or else. You can't just write down, you'll fix this. So the wrong way is to say, seller agrees to fix this. The right way to write that is, seller agrees to fix this. In the event the seller does not fix this, they will give me X amount of dollars. That's the right way to do it. Now you give your lawyer something with teeth that something they can sink their teeth into. Because now the lawyer can say, oh, we didn't get documentation that this was fixed. You got to credit my client X amount of dollars on closing. That's the right way. But a lot of the times, and Marlon, me and you have been involved in deals like this ourselves, where I've been representing the seller, poorly written clause. I've turned to my client saying, we don't have to do any of this stuff because it's not written right. Unfortunately, this comes down to the onus of the agent. I've been fortunate. I've never run into that myself. I make sure to run all my clauses by my lawyer. So we skip over a lot of that. But yeah, guys, poorly written clauses. It's good to read over your agreements. I know it's difficult when it's a very fast-paced market because you end up looking over a lot of the details. But anyway, last but not least, when you're showing and you've got, I'm just going to say it. If you have an idiot seller, if you are an idiot seller and you don't want to leave during showings, just understand, and Neil D'Souza will tell you all about it. The minute a buyer walks into your house during a showing and you're sitting on the couch flipping through watching The Simpsons, he's thinking discount. You've just discounted your property. Doesn't matter what your bottom line is. Doesn't matter anything like that. No one's going to pay you top dollar for that. Not a chance. Do yourself a favor, guys. Go to Tim Hortons, get a coffee, take a drive around the block. But do not be home during your showings. Under no circumstance should you be home during your showings. Again, you're just letting money fly out the window. Yeah, guys.
Love it.
That's
Number 5, don't be home for showings. I have to just jump onto that one, Jason, because as you mentioned, I've walked into a property and the owners are there. They're sitting on the couch and watching TV. And I know immediately that other buyers are going to just feel awkward. So I immediately know that I'm going to be able to drop the price. And number 2 on that, when homeowners are home, when the owners are home, the sellers are home, you get to ask them questions, and you can ask questions in such a way that they will devalue their own home without realizing it, and giving you material to be able to lower the price. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Well, let me go through my top 5 things when it comes to income properties. First of all, I want to start with this one, and that is number 1 is not being able, like, you're getting ready. You're like, okay, I'm going to buy this. You put in your offer, and then you realize that you can't qualify for that property because you own other properties. You think you've got it all under control, but meanwhile, you haven't done that. And that's why what Marlon was saying was number 1. You can't qualify, even though you've got other properties, because you don't take it into account the way that the banks take it into account. And we get that. Glad you got lots of money, but the banks look at you differently. So number 1 thing that we see is issues with qualifying. Number two, sellers don't want to provide information. The sellers, it's an income property and they take long, and you're trying to get information, or maybe you don't ask for all the information and they continue to move on. That information is vital. What do you find out? You find out that, oh, you don't actually have tenants in this apartment. You don't have X, Y, and Z. They haven't been doing this maintenance. Oh, they said they did that. They didn't actually do that. The sellers don't provide you information and you don't follow up on it. Number three, not doing the calculations, not doing your due diligence. Income properties. Guys, if you're going to get into it, it's about making money. And the way you do that is by making sure you check it out, making sure you run the numbers, or your advisor, whoever is helping you with that. You got to make sure you do the due diligence, because you don't want to buy it. And here's something that we see a lot right now. This is happening right now. There are people that are buying income properties without doing any of the due diligence. Why? Because they see the price is cheap. Oh, look at that number. It's a really cheap price. And it seems priced because maybe they live somewhere else where prices are much higher. Well, it doesn't mean that it cash flows. Just because the price is low to you doesn't mean that the property is cash flowing, doesn't mean it's going to make you money. You might have a property that loses money for the next number of years. Now, if you're one of those people, sometimes you might be wanting that tax deduction, but guys, why not make money when you can make money? That's the point. That's why it's called an income property. So anyone who tries to sell you on the strategy of losing money, anyways, we'll move on. This for the wholesalers out there, when it comes to income properties, assignment clause. If you're going to wholesale the property, you better make sure that you can assign it. And if that's not in there, you're stuck. You're stuck in that deal. And I've seen it. And all of a sudden, some bloke who doesn't have the money thought he was going to wholesale it because somebody told him and taught him how to do it. And it wasn't in there. And he didn't tell his realtor what he was doing. And so the realtor didn't have that information. And now all of a sudden they're stuck trying to figure out how to close on an $800,000 property. So make sure that for those wholesalers, make sure your assignment clause is there. And finally, for income properties, bad tenants. Number one thing that for income properties is having bad tenants or not doing your due diligence when choosing tenants. And that's the asset when it comes to an income property, is the tenant. So above all things, you've got to do your due diligence on the tenants and make sure that you've got quality tenants. Otherwise, you're going to have a subpar investment property. And instead of it making investments into your bank account, you may be making investments into the bank's bank account or the building to pay for that stuff. So make sure that you do that due diligence. All right, guys, that's our top fives. Things that can go wrong. Top, I guess 15, because we each did 5.
We all gave 5.
We all get 5. So there you go. Top.
A lot of things can go wrong.
Yeah, that's right. And we didn't even get into the list of things that go wrong. But guys, thank you guys so much for all the questions. Thank you for being with us here on another Magic Monday. For my co-hosts, Jason Vaz and Marlon Yee, we'll see you guys next.